Hello, welcome to this webinar today in which Railinc is going to be sharing their best practices for deploying and adopting an intelligent enterprise scale data catalog. I am Dharma Kutanur. I am the Senior Director of Product Marketing for Informatica's Enterprise Data Catalog product. And in a couple of minutes, I'll introduce the two speakers from Railinc who will be joining me today in this webinar. Data drives all digital transformation priorities, and enterprises are transforming their businesses by driving innovation to develop new services, improving customer experience, or realize operational efficiencies. All of these depend on good data and directly translate into business imperatives, driving your data analytics architecture and into priorities for one or more of your data management journeys. And this could be around enabling advanced analytics or self-service analytics. It could be around modernizing your infrastructure by moving to the cloud. It could be around the ability to have a 360 view of your customers and other key business entities, or it could be around enabling enterprise-level data governance to ensure you have trusted data and ensuring compliance with key government regulations. Understanding what data you have, where it's coming from, who is using it, and knowing what data is trusted and what is not is the first step for all of these data management journeys. And as you modernize your data architecture, the data landscape is becoming increasingly complex and far exceeding the capacity of humans to understand this fully on their own. And that's why intelligent data catalogs are emerging as a foundational part of the modern data architecture. Here are some examples of how some of Informatica's customers are leveraging Informatica's enterprise data catalog to address this challenge and enable their data management journeys across different industry verticals and across different types of use cases. And as our customers make progress on this journey, what we are seeing in the market and what we're hearing from our customers is that driving adoption and using the data catalog for getting the most value from your enterprise data requires a conscious effort to build a culture or build a practice around the use of a data catalog. It also requires collaboration across business and IT around data and leveraging this to add valuable business context to the data. And intelligent data catalogs with the right set of capabilities can play a critical role in fostering this collaboration across business and IT and providing you with a huge head start through AI-enabled automated curation of data. That's the story you're going to hear from Railinc today. You're also going to hear from Railinc speakers about their perspective on their journey towards an intelligent data platform, with a particular focus on the role of an intelligent data catalog in enabling this journey. You're also going to hear about how the data catalog facilitated collaboration across business and IT around data, and how they use this to enrich their data and drive adoption of the data catalog with business users across the enterprise. With that said, let me introduce the speakers who are going to be joining me today. I am really honored to be joined today by two distinguished speakers from Railinc. First, we have Sean Petway, who's Senior Business Analyst at Railinc. He represents and advocates for Railinc internal business teams to ensure that the data needs of the business are met to increase the value delivered to their internal and external customers. So he's in a really great position to provide the business analyst perspective on their journey. Ramesh Veerappan is Data Platform Architect at Railinc. He's responsible for the technical architecture of reporting and analytics solutions at Railinc, ensuring best practices for implementing architectural standards and frameworks across their team. He leads key data architecture decisions across teams and researching on tools and automation to improve existing processes and increase efficiency across the organization. Welcome, Sean and Ramesh, and thanks for joining us today. And let me hand over the ball to you now.
Thank you very much, Dharma. We appreciate you giving us the opportunity to share our experience. So we're going to talk to you a little bit today about our journey with the Enterprise Data Catalog and how we landed on that and how we're using that to help all of our business users. But first, a real quick word about Railinc. We are actually a software company in the freight rail industry, and we have a unique position in that we work with all of the large railroads, shippers, third-party logistics providers within North America to increase the effectiveness of the North American rail network. And with that, we have a lot of data as part of being a trusted partner with the rail industry. We've got quite a bit of data. We've got a lot of software applications. And the biggest thing is that we have a huge daily transactional volume of messaging and data that comes through Railinc on a daily basis. So we do a lot of, we have a lot of data, and we had to kind of figure out how we can best use that data and allow our business analysts and data scientists to utilize our unique position within the industry. We're very much a source for single source for consolidated freight rail data, and this just gives you a little bit of an idea. This slide gives you an idea of the types of data we have. We've got a lot of information on whenever freight cars move, traffic management types of data, gateway operations types of data, as well as financial data and health data of the actual equipment, not only the freight cars, but the components of those freight cars. So we have a lot of information.
Sean, but we are also the DMV for all the rail cars in North America, right?
That is very true. You could say that we are very similar to the DMV for the railroads in North America. We have an application in this rail car characteristics area where we house all of the characteristics of every freight car that moves within North America, which is regulated that they must provide all of the characteristics, much like you have to provide your information to the DMV. You have to do the same kind of thing with one of our flagship applications. So yes, you could say we're very much like the DMV, but we also do a bit more as far as financial clearinghouses, as well as house multiple other types of data for the rail industry to help the railroads communicate more effectively and work more effectively together to move cargo. So we're going to kind of give you an idea of how we got to where we are and where we're at within our journey in developing what internally we had called the Railinc Intelligent Data Platform, how we got onto that path and how we enabled metadata management, as well as how we landed on using Informatica's Enterprise Data Catalog and adopted that to help all of our business folks as well as our IT folks with knowing what data is out there, how to find it, those kinds of things. So from a perspective of a Railinc data platform is what we're calling it, the Railinc Intelligent Data Platform. Ramesh, could you give us a little bit of background on what that really means for Railinc and the things that we wanted to do?
Sure, Sean. So what does intelligent platform mean for Railinc? So we are looking at components within the platform which we can automate to avoid repurposing, our scripts or even changes to architecture due to, the impact of change in technology. As you all are aware that the technology is changing and every time there is a new technology introduced, we as adopters of, various technology, we like to, embrace those technology, as we seem fit to our particular use cases. So the first component here I want to discuss about is the ETL abstraction and how it's impacting us is currently we are using a combination of like Power Center mapping, scoop scripts, Hive scripts to how to ingest our data into our data platform, which is comprises of Hadoop and Greenplum. Having said that, we also have a use case where we're actually leveraging the big data management toolset from Informatica to move our data to the cloud. What I think BDM, big data management from Informatica brings to the table is hopefully through our ELT, the information evolution process, it provides a layer of abstraction. It enables our jobs to run immaterial or whatever the execution engine is, whether it's Hive, Spark, or Blaze. And it's flexible architecture in such a way that even if a new execution gets introduced, over the next, year or couple of years, there's very minimal, in fact, there's pretty much no code rewrite I can think of that we have to do to actually ingest the data into our platform. So that is something that we are planning and look into how we can actually automate our data ingestion process into our data platform. The next component is the automation of machine learning and data engineering process. Currently, our data scientists and engineers are writing, a series of, Python, Spark, or Scala scripts for our machine learning projects. In a similar fashion, what we want to do is we want to, accelerate the process among our data scientists to, do the data preparation steps, the machine learning, processes that are, introduced. So even the aspect of data preparation too, we are actually trying to evaluate different tool sets that we can actually help to empower our business users to more efficiently prepare the data sets they need to use for their, machine learning projects. Our goal is basically we want to empower users to leverage the platform to provide a variety of services, like do their self-service of reporting data extracts to provide to our railroad customers with minimal IT resource and intervention. Now, when I said all these different components are adding into our platform, it also introduces a degree of complexity with respect to metadata management. We realized immediately without good governance, our data lake will eventually become a data swamp. We need to have good governance program in place, as well as we also want to have tool set that can actually help to manage all the different assets across the organization. What we have seen in the past is there were a lot of data duplication that was occurring across the organization. There were actually cases where there were different representation or data sets that we may have in the past provided to our customers. We want to be in a position where we actually provide a consistent view of our data to our customers. We want to increase collaboration with our business users. We want to promote data sharing, and we want to avoid all the different aspect of what we have seen historically of isolation of data preparation and so forth. So with that in mind, we decided to evaluate different tools from tools from Talent, IBM, SAS, and Informatica. We actually spent about 3 to 4 weeks of POC to go through this different tool set, and we finally landed on with the Informatica Enterprise Data Catalog. I think the most appealing feature that we loved about EDC, or Enterprise Data Catalog, is the Google search of our data assets. It was immediately very, very pleasing to our users. I mean, they embraced it. All the flexibility of tagging, scanning, and all the different drivers capabilities that it provides was very appealing to both the IT and the business team. I just want to mention here too that in the evaluation process, we did have both business and IT involved. Now here, basically, I just want to highlight a few things. Is data and analytics is offering us tremendous opportunity to explore various avenues within our organization. We have created a data lake which will require governance in place to better manage and organize our assets. Our data management practice is maturing, and as I pointed out earlier, we are exploring options to automate our AI competency center. currently we are focused on 2-3 use cases to add value to our customers. We want to extend it across all our business areas within our organization to add value to our customer products. To enable this, we need governance and data asset management in place with automation. Now, jumping on to how we were initially organized, right, just to give you some historical aspect, most of our data or our documentation was pretty much on wikis. They usually are outdated in silo fashion, and then the ELT was actually just focusing on just a lot of manual scripting. We have to do like either Hive or Scoop, and then the analytics we pretty much use SAS and Tableau. Not all those more modernized tool sets. And then on the consumption layer, we pretty much enable our business users through consider that through data marts. And on the current state, what we have is we have deployed EDC, which is our enterprise data catalog. That is the means where now the business users are actually using it to actually find where a particular asset is located. And we are evolving some of our Power Center mapping to move into big data management from Informatica so that we don't need to worry about the underlying engine. And then we are also looking into researching into using tools. There are new data prep tools. There's also one from Informatica as well as other vendors. And finally, in order to help with self-service, we also have added sandboxes in our environment.
So from a metadata management standpoint, Ramesh mentioned that our current state is we've moved to Enterprise Data Catalog, and that has really been very beneficial to us. But we really had some challenges when we were investigating, before we even started the investigation of potential tool sets and applications we can use to help us. And those challenges were essentially all related to people. From a people standpoint, our business folks and even new IT folks would have trouble finding any real trusted data. We had, as Ramesh mentioned, we had things that were documented on the wiki. We had a lot of data that was siloed in people's heads, and we didn't really have, unless you could go and find someone like Ramesh or one of our IT folks to go and look at the code, or find someone who was actually had been around and had some exposure to this data asset or that data asset and know kind of how it evolved. There was no real easy way for employees, business analysts, data scientists, solutions engineers, product support folks to even really understand what assets were available to them, and then also how those assets came to be. So really at that point we were very reliant upon either IT resources or subject matter experts or someone who may have had, by happenstance, had some intrinsic knowledge of how this data asset was available and what it could be used for, as well as how it evolved to get to where it was. From a process standpoint, that led to a lot of siloed information, really, at the end of the day. And so, as a new business analyst, I had an experience coming in where I had trouble finding the data assets that I needed to actually do my job. So if a customer would come to me, or my committee that I was working with, and would need some data or some reporting or some analysis done to solve an industry problem or to identify trends or those kinds of things, I would have to actually go seek out other folks within the building, subject matter experts, or someone who may have had some exposure to this in the past. And I can tell you from my own journey, it was very frustrating to not be able to quickly and easily find that information to help me get my fulfill whatever need or requirement I was trying to fulfill. So it definitely hampered my productivity as well as hampered the satisfaction of my customer that was asking for that either information or analysis. As Ramesh also mentioned, we did have a lot of data duplication. So you may find a table, even if I had gone through that exercise of finding an SME or finding someone who had been exposed to the proper data asset, they may very well have copied that asset to another place, and it may be stale, it may not be the official data set, or they may have used it for a separate purpose, and it may have contained some of the information that I needed, and so it could have looked proper, but I would have no way of knowing without even more investigation and discussion. So also we had some manual documentation. There was a lot of information out on the wiki, and typically that tends to be stale very quickly. So that was another big piece of our problems that we were trying to solve. And also, we knew that we were going in a direction to expand our usage of our data and to try and make that move to new tools, new tool sets, and new things, new ways of viewing our data and trying to leverage that data for our business purposes. So those were our main real challenges from a user perspective, from a business perspective, to be able to we wanted to try to extend that capability of self-service to all of our folks, all of our business people, all of our data scientists. And we really embraced this concept of citizen data scientists within Railinc, and so that this aligned quite well with that. So from an enterprise data catalog standpoint, as Ramesh mentioned, we did some investigation, and we really loved the Google-like search. That was a very, very effective feature for us, but also the ability to quickly and easily find that data and identify that it is my trusted data source, the asset that I need to use to solve my problem. The lineage was also a huge thing for us from a standpoint of being able to understand and give yourself more confidence that you've landed on the right data asset by seeing where that data originated from, how it evolved to the data asset that you're looking at, and also where it may stand from a standpoint of impacts down the road. So you can really see where that data fits into the entire picture. The tagging of data was also a critical piece for us, because we have a good amount of data scientists and solutions engineers here that do quite a bit of analysis and reporting, and that further enhances your trust in the data by seeing, okay, well, this data scientist uses it for these types of functionality and these types of reporting that are going external, and so it really enhances your trust and visibility to the data, so that once you land on that asset, you can really feel like you can really know that you've found the proper asset to answer your questions or to resolve whatever business issue you're looking to resolve or do analysis on. From a standpoint of a business glossary, this also was a key thing to us, because we were in the midst of a business glossary journey simultaneous to the enterprise data catalog journey. And so the capability to integrate the business glossary was very, very key as well. And as a matter of fact, we even used it to identify there were some things that we had internally that certain teams were using the same term for virtually the same things, but they were using it in different ways. An example is what we call a standard point location code, where it's a up to 9-digit number. However, we had applications that were using a 6-digit split code, and then some applications that were using the full 9-digit split code. So it even helped us ingesting that into Enterprise Data Catalog, helped to expose those types of things as well, that different teams are using the same asset for different uses, and we're not as consistent throughout the nomenclature of our business cost glossary. So that's helping us to evolve to make sure that, we call that out. If it's a 6-digit split, then let's call that out and make sure that we are all on the same page from a glossary standpoint, from a terminology standpoint. So those were some key factors in what led us to Enterprise Data Catalog as our solution to some of the challenges we talked about earlier. I believe, Ramesh, if you would take us through a little bit about the deployment and how we approached.
Sure. So we actually followed the guidelines published by Informatica after we did an assessment internally of our sizing of what are the metadata we are going to scan, looking at how many data assets we will be scanning and so forth. So with that in mind, based on working very closely with Informatica, we did come up with this particular sizing. It is relatively small to some extent, but we do have plans to expand this in the near future. So in terms of configuration, you pretty much can just read out from this slide. This is what has been recommended by Informatica for the things that we were planning to do. And in terms of our deployment options, so when we initially started our enterprise data catalog journey, we installed the EDC component into our existing Hadoop cluster. I think as a best practice, we learned after a few months that it was actually not the product itself. We had other products that were also installed as part of the Hadoop cluster that was interfering with some of our catalog process. So we can definitely say that EDC was not causing any issues, but we had issues with other products that was interfering. So what we decided to do was to actually take that out and spin up a separate cluster specific to run all our EDC components separately. And as a best practice, this is a metadata tool. You want it to be running independently of your other components within your enterprise ecosystem. So with that in mind, we actually went with the embedded cluster option. And this diagram just pretty much shows how we actually rolled out our embedded cluster deployment. You can just reference it or use it as a guideline for your deployment or your future plans.
So from an adoption standpoint, we looked at our roles initially of our users in the Enterprise Catalog for the Enterprise Data Catalog, and we had the normal roles, the data steward, data engineer, and I'm going to focus on our data scientists and business analysts as well as product support specialists as well. We've kind of expanded that role, that category of roles to include our product support folks as well, because they need access to the data as well and be able to quickly and easily learn about the assets that we have available for them. So how did we drive adoption? Well, we actually had a 3-tiered sort of strategy, and really it played out in a little bit of a different way, where our initial population and socialization tiers really started going concurrently very quickly. So we really tried an initial popularization and socialization, and then we moved into a more targeted popularization and socialization strategy. And I'll give you a little more detail on those, specifically around our initial population. We used the built-in attributes that comes with Enterprise Data Catalog, specifically around the description field. And one of the things that we really did there was try to have a quick, succinct, descriptive sentence in the descriptive field for each of the data assets that we have. And then also one of the things that we learned along our journey when we started talking more to our data scientists and got more to an implementation and adoption phase, that one of the things that they really wanted that that highlighted from those conversations with them is the frequency that the actual data set is updated. So we added an update frequency within our description. We just added a update frequency information, so we can let them know if the data is actually refreshed from the source on a monthly, daily, quarterly, whatever frequency that data is refreshed from the source, so that they know that they're dealing with either the most current frequency updated source that they can. Some of our data scientists do a lot of reporting on a daily basis, so they need to know they've got the latest and greatest, most refreshed view of that data. Also, we took advantage of creating our own custom attributes. We created a usage type custom attribute that would really allow us to communicate with our users to let them know this is an enterprise level data set or an application level data set that may be used by one of our actual software applications, or to let them know where it is in the journey, if it's an interim data set or an original source data set, so they can kind of get a view from our custom attribute what type of data set that is from a usage standpoint. Also, we added a data owner field, which allowed us to, if you do have questions about that data or data set, it can point them in a direction to a manager or a team that they can go to open some further dialogue. One of the key things is the business ready flag that we added, which is a yes or no flag that we added custom attribute, that we would be able to tell our users that this has been reviewed and certified by the business, that it is business ready and is known to be used in reporting or an analysis that's ongoing. So we blessed that data set as a business ready asset. Also, we added this certified date and recertified date. So anything that we have set as business ready, we're going to tell you when we last reviewed it and when we plan to review it again. Release 10.2.2 is really kind of going to negate the need for some of these custom attributes that we created, which is good. Informatica read our minds on it, so we can now migrate that and reduce a little work on our side from a certification standpoint or a business ready aspect. So that's a really good thing for us. So those are the attributes that we used during our initial population phase. And then we moved into socialization. And really all that, what that comprised of was having articles as often as we could on our internal corporate website to get the word out about Enterprise Data Catalog, as well as we just had a lot of lunch and learn sessions where we do a live demo, show folks what the Enterprise Data Catalog looks like, how they can use it, the benefits that they can can gain from it, and give them that live view of what's going on with it, so that we can get their buy-in, and then also encourage their usage of it by enhancing the data by tagging the data. So we moved into a targeted popularization and socialization phase, where we really targeted key functional areas, key groups that we could actually engage with, talk to, share enterprise data catalog with them, show them how it works, get their buy-in and also key personnel would be included in those discussions, and they would help us to identify critical data assets that we may not have known about, but also get their buy-in to encourage them individually and as a group to tag the data that they're most intimately familiar with on a daily basis, so that it enhances that data for the rest of our business users. And I think that was a very successful strategy. I think we would have moved into the targeted population and socialization phase at an earlier point if we could. So if we'd have known that, we'd have moved there quicker. So from a lessons learned throughout this journey, on the business side, as I just mentioned, engaging with the business units is very key. I think that's key up front, but also it's key throughout the process, especially once you get to a deployment phase and an encouragement of usage phase, to make sure that they're fully bought in, they see the capabilities and the ways that it can enhance not only their daily life, but also enhance their coworkers' daily experiences as well, with finding those data assets quickly and with confidence. Also, you got to know your audience. Like I mentioned the update frequency issue that we found out. If we'd had some more discussions up front, we would have flushed out those types of things a little earlier and could have potentially done some additional things to help that process along, so to speak. So knowing your audience is really key. And then another big key for us was to communicate and collaborate with your IT team. Ramesh and I were joined at the hip when we were going through this process, and that really helped to make sure that business and IT was on the same page. We all knew what was going on, and we took the journey together, so to speak. Ramesh, from an IT side, do you want to share the lessons learned?
Yeah, from the IT perspective, I think the main key item here is, choosing the right deployment approach for your enterprise data catalog. As I mentioned earlier, we do have two options. One is, having it coexist as part of your Hadoop cluster. The other option is to have it outside of the Hadoop cluster. I think the strong recommendation here, based on our lesson learned, is to have that outside of the Hadoop cluster. And here there's another point about the connectivity requirements. So from our standpoint, we had requirements to connect to Oracle, Greenplum, and HBase, Phoenix, and also SAS. So we have been very successful connecting to all of them. And then for SAS, we are working with a vendor called Compact BI to enable SAS data sets or reports to be consumed as part of the EDC catalog. As Sean mentioned, I think I definitely concur with him that collaboration with the business team is actually very key for the success. We usually hash out some of the access issues that may happen. So we work together very closely, provide access to the different groups. We actually work in terms of creating different roles within the organization and by department, and so we are able to give a control access to whatever data assets that they need.
So from a business impact and benefit standpoint, we really did see a lot of visibility and accountability improvements with Enterprise Data Catalog, and we're still on our journey, but that seems to be one of the very key things and the key things that we're seeing as a benefit from our implementation of Enterprise Data Catalog. Another really big thing was the lineage and impact analysis. Specifically around the lineage piece, it has been very impactful to our users to be able to see how that data has evolved to the data asset that they are looking at. So then that answers a lot of questions for them, as well as instills additional confidence in the data asset for them to know that they've, to be able to further help to identify and make sure that they've landed on the proper asset to use. From a self-service standpoint, we've seen quite a bit of reduction in information being housed in silos. You don't have nearly as much information that's just in people's heads, rather than now they can actually go, they have a tool to actually use to find data assets. It still may, they still may have some questions, but the fact that they actually have a starting point is a really big thing for us, and it has helped to ease the burden of interruption that happens with some of our data scientists and some of our IT folks, so that they're not always being asked to either go look at the code, tell me, is this the right data asset that I need to use, or trying to find out if you've had experience with that particular asset and in doing investigation on your own to try and figure that out. So that's reduced that siloed information quite a bit. Also, the tagging piece has really helped with the trust, and it's helped along this journey of data information not being siloed. People taking that siloed information and tagging it to the particular assets that they use most or they're most familiar with, that gives their colleagues a lot of confidence in that data asset, and to be able to very quickly identify, this looks like the right data set for me to use to handle my business issue that I've got to resolve, whether it be analysis or reporting or those kinds of things. And then overall, it's just driven a lot more efficiency across the organization. So it's been a very, very fruitful journey for us, and we're still in the midst of it, by the way. And just as an aside, here's kind of what our users are telling us. It's nice to know how my colleagues use the data, and it confirms I've found the proper source of truth. We've heard that a few times throughout this journey, and that just shows you that it does help instill the confidence in that asset. Also, the interface, the Google-like searching and the lineage, understanding the source, is a very, very big thing as well that we've seen users provide feedback on. Also, that ability not to have to go look around the building or within the organization for an SME to talk to find out how is this the proper data set, or how did that data set come to be, or those kinds of things. So that really helped. And then from a lineage and impact standpoint, we've had situations where we could quickly and easily identify repercussions from particular columns being removed, or even additions to know, testing-wise, what do we need to do, what applications does this flow to, those kinds of things. So it really has, we've had really good feedback thus far.
Yeah, thanks, Sean and Ramesh. It's really great to hear your perspective on your journey with the Enterprise Data Catalog, and it's also great to see these testimonials from your users and on the value they are seeing with the data catalog, right? So specifically on the lineage and impact analysis point that you touched on and how that is helping your users get more confidence in the data, especially as the data gets distributed across, your traditional Oracle data warehouse and your data lake environment, and being able to point them to the right location for the data. Can you just maybe talk us through how you're using the lineage capabilities in EDC, using an example from your environment?
Of course. Matter of fact, that last that mentioned actually is a real-world scenario where a team was being asked to remove a particular column from a table. And then they came to the data platform team, which is the team that Ramesh and I are on, and they said, we need to remove this column. And in the past, we'd have had to go, or I'd have had to have asked Ramesh to go into the code, see where this column fits, what table it's in, and are there any impacts, are there any changes that we would have to address by making this change. Well, this EDC really helped us from a lineage standpoint to actually go in and look and say, okay, let's look at it in EDC. Let's look at the lineage, and we looked at the table, and this screen is essentially the view of the high-level view of the table. But if you expand the lineage, which I'll go to the next slide, where you can see the lineage is expanding, which that gives you a very nice view of how things are, how this data has evolved, right? So if you look, and I can't remember the exact column, but essentially in one of these middle tables, that was the area that they were asking to remove a column from. So we could quickly and easily see that, okay, well, there's downstream impacts to this removal of this column. So it's not only affecting just this one team that is requesting this change, but it also helped us to see, all right, well, if we make this change, then you're affecting these teams, these applications down the road, and it's going to negatively affect our business users throughout the company, as well as our end user, the customer.
And to add to that, just to add to Sean's comment here, I think there was a fairly recent request. We also had a request today, and also I think a couple of weeks ago, that our application team has decided to drop like 5 columns, and then they are adding they're supposed to add 2 columns, and today they decided to add 1 more column. So for us is, we have essentially reduced our effort to actually figure out by that particular entity that's been used across the enterprise, what are the different applications and what are the different tables that have been sourced from the different databases are being impacted. And, we can readily share that information within our team as well as to the other application teams regarding the impact.
Great to hear that example, Sean, Ramesh. I mean, I think it's showing how pretty much in near real time, when there is a change to be made, you can communicate with your business teams what's the impact of the change and what you and the business teams need to plan for, right, to accommodate the change.
Correct. And speaking of impact, we actually had an additional example where we had a request to change the length of the data in a particular column. And in this case, I think it was the calculated split number on the view here that you see in the column view. Well, we could use that lineage impact view to actually see where that flows. So not only if we change the length of the calculated split column, we wouldn't have to change. In the past, we'd had to go in and look at the code and all that and figure out where do we have to make that change throughout. This helped us a lot to be able to just go and see, okay, well, we know that it flows down to these other three tables, so we would have to change, it helped us to quickly identify instead of making one change and then we've got to go look and find out where. This helped us to very quickly say, we've got to change that attribute all the way downstream. Make sure that flows downstream, which helps us with implementation and testing and those kinds of things. So you know what you have to do to be able to fulfill that request, and it helps you to fulfill that request quicker because you have more clarity on what needs to be done.
Yeah, great. And I think, thanks for walking through that example. I think it brings it home in a very tangible way, the value of some of these powerful capabilities like, end-to-end lineage and impact analysis in the catalog. Can you talk briefly about what's next for you in your data management journey, especially as it relates to your user enterprise data catalog?
Yes. From a business standpoint, we're planning to, we're continuing along our journey of the enterprise data catalog and moving forward to maturing that. Right now, we're probably 40% complete along our journey. So the main focus right now is to move forward with getting closer to 100% on EDC adoption and usage and getting all of that population and socialization completed. And I know that there are some next steps for us around data governance. We definitely want to shore up our data governance and move in that direction a little bit more. Right now, we're focusing strictly on maturing that enterprise data catalog. So that's really where we're at for now on our journey, but I see it evolving going forward. Ramesh can probably speak to the IT side of our journey.
Sure. So Sean and I are actually working on a roadmap for the enterprise, both from the technical side and as well as business, on how we want to roll out. One is the upgrade, which is currently we are in 10.2 version. We do want to leverage the new features and capability of 10.2.2. As Sean mentioned, some of the things that he does, like providing reviews and all the collaborations and so forth, that we love what's been provided in the 10.2.2 upgrade. We're going to move up the stack on that. And then the other piece is we actually fairly recently cataloged the analytics project, our data science project, which is we want to extend that to other analytics products that we have in the organization. We also want to extend the cataloging to more applications in the organization, so that we want each application to do their own self-service impact assessment. So that's also part of our roadmap. And then the final one is we do have a logical reference model in the organization that shows both the business and the entity relationship. We want to embed that across our applications and the data platform, so that people have both a logical and physical representation of their data assets and and how the organization of the data as well. So I think that's what we are working on. So hope to share that in the near future with others as well.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sean and Ramesh. And certainly, I think, as both of you mentioned, some of the the new collaboration capability that we introduced in our 10.2.2 release, the latest release of EDC, would be very relevant and help you, I guess, make even more progress in your adoption journey along the lines of what you talked about. So just to wrap up very briefly, again, related to what Ramesh and Sean talked about, our product management team, Quan Tan, who is the Senior Director of Product Management here at Informatica, he is putting together an EDC business adoption guide, based on inputs from, Railinc and, many other customers that we work with. And, we stay tuned for this. It's going to be, made available sometime in the summer. And as you can see here, it's really going to, kind of provide our perspective on, on a phased approach to follow in terms of, driving business adoption of an enterprise data catalog, starting with how you formulate your overall program strategy and goals, align with your key business priorities, start small as a pilot and then expand, and then how you collaborate across business and IT, as Ramesh and Sean talked about, to enrich the information in the data catalog, and then finally how do you train your users and drive adoption. Stay tuned. We will come back soon with more information on when this business adoption guide will be available for you to get from Informatica. And finally, all of the intelligent capabilities that you heard today are enabled by the metadata-driven intelligence that we have in our CLAIRE AI engine that really powers all of the AI capabilities that we have in EDC, as well as our other data management products from Informatica. And finally, in closing, I'm reiterating what I started with. As you heard from Ramesh and Sean, data catalogs, intelligent data catalogs are, becoming more and more critical to enabling enterprises to really, fully understand the data landscape and make that data visibility and understanding available to business users across the enterprise. And that's why it's becoming more and more critical as a first step on any data management journey for enterprises. With that said, if you want to learn more about how an intelligent data catalog can help you make progress on your data management journey, here are some good assets for you to download from the Informatica website. Aberdeen, the research firm, recently did some groundbreaking primary research of data catalog users and how a data catalog helps advance analytics maturity in enterprises. So you can download that white paper. There's also an ebook that we published recently on how data catalogs can really help drive enterprise data governance program and what are some of the essential capabilities required to help drive data governance programs forward. And finally, there's a lot more information and resources available at the EDC webpage on Informatica's website. So thank you, Ramesh and Sean, again, for really sharing your valuable perspective and insight on your data management journey and with your use of the enterprise data catalog in that journey. And I also want to thank you all for attending this webinar today. Thanks.
Thank you.